Okay, so in this video I'm going to continue showing you how to create or how to work with the platform behavior in Construct 2. This is what we did in the previous video. We have this block moving around and this player sprite that follows the block and has animations for jumping and falling and walking. And I showed you how to set up all that, and also how to make like a power-up so that it enables you to jump more than once. So this blue thing over here is a power-up. If you touch it, you collect it, and it gives you the ability to jump more than once. But in this video now, I'm going to show you how to do wall jumps and also how to hang off of ledges so that you could do more interesting things with how you design your levels and things like that. So let's go into it. Let's go into Construct 2, and this is what we have here. Also, the file is also available on my Patreon page, which is free. All you have to do is just follow me and you'll get access to the file. So now, what we want to do now is think about how we can make it so that we can wall jump. This whole video will be unedited, so you could kind of get the whole process involved. I figured that's a little more insightful. So anyways, let's get into it. Okay, so when wall jumping, we want the ability to jump off of it. So it's kind of like a boost to your jump, like an extra jump, but only while you're next to a wall. So we have to have the ability to figure out whether or not the player is standing next to a wall. I think the player behavior has that built in. Yeah, is by wall. So that makes it a little easier to check whether the player is by the wall, because there's already a condition in here that does that. So we can use that if we want. You can check if it's the left side or the right side. So since we're just focusing on platform behavior, might as well use it. It'll make things a little easier. But there are of course other ways to implement it without using this condition. Maybe I'll show that in future videos. Okay, so platform has wall to the left. Maybe we should put it into the jump condition or action, because we want it to activate when we're jumping. So maybe I could drag it in there. That way, if the player can jump and the player's next to a wall, actually, let's go into the player's family. I showed you how we set that up in a previous video and why we have a family, and you could add in instance variables to it. So let's add an instance variable that is can wall jump, and set that to a boolean. So this basically will allow us to enable or disable the ability to wall jump. So maybe you don't want the player to be able to wall jump by default. Maybe you want to enable it later, but after attaining like a power up or something like that. You got that? So set it to boolean, set it to false for default. Now when we press W, we want a sub event here, actually a blank sub event, and we want to drag this condition, current jump less than max jumps, and put this in there, because we don't want this affecting the wall jump. ability, like when we want to be able to wall jump regardless of whether or not we can jump in other cases, and we want its own separate thing in this case. So by putting it into this sub event over here, this won't run if this runs. If it was nested inside it, then it would run, but we don't want that. We wanted its own event that runs separately of whether this is true or false. Okay, so platform, the player is next to a wall. When W is pressed, we want to change the velocity of the player vector Y. We can just make it the same velocity as a regular jump. Since it doesn't affect the jumps, I don't think we need to add one to the current jump. But we could also add a velocity to the X value. So I just copied that and backed out a bit, and then set the X velocity. Since the wall is to the left of the player, we want the X velocity to be positive. So maybe we could change it to 100. I don't know. We could just test things to see what works best. Let's try 100 for now. That way it'll look as if we're like pushing off the wall and moving to the right. So let's try that. Also, another thing, you may want to disable control of the player while they're jumping, so that if you're holding to the left, because you jump up towards the wall to the left, you might be pressing the left button at that time when you press the jump button as well, and so the player might continue trying to move left. So you may want to disable moving left while you wall jump, so that it looks, so you get the full force going the other way basically. But let's keep that in mind for now. And let's just copy this, change this to right, and then change the X to a negative. So now we have both directions. Now let's run that and see what happens. So now we have our character and we can move around. Let's try jumping and then pressing it. Okay, so that's what happens. As you can see, I let go when I jump towards the wall, and the player decelerates. I guess that happens when you jump normally and you just let go of the left or right key. The player decelerates. So when we do that, it's kind of weird. You can see it kind of just stops there. It would be kind of good if you like continued moving, if you held like as if you were holding the button. So that's another thing that we could think about, is having it so that the player's deceleration is different while you're in the air compared to while you're on the ground. So that would kind of simulate, as it would kind of be as if you're simulating friction with the ground. So if you're not touching it, you'd kind of like continue moving. So we could implement that, and that might help improve how this looks. So let's work on that. Also, if we do the other side, it jumps to the other side as well. Wall jumps to the other side. So let's think about that friction aspect of it, and having the deceleration change depending on whether the player is on the floor or in the air. So if we go to one of these other events where we have is on floor. If the player is on the floor, then we could set the deceleration to what it currently is, 500. So I'm pretty sure there's an action that does that. Set deceleration to 500. Else, if not on the floor, we could set the deceleration to something smaller, maybe 100. So we could try that, see how that looks. Let's run it. So if we move, still decelerates, but if we jump, as you can see, I let go of the button and the player continues to keep going forward. And you can still kind of control the character, but that might be another thing that we could tweak a little bit, is whether or not the player is moving left or right in the air, to adjust the deceleration so that it's quicker, because at the moment you can't really like move around as much in the air. So we could work on that a bit later, but for now this shows you how to do a wall jump. And since we changed the deceleration, now he's jumping off much further. So that looks pretty good. As you can see, you can wall jump more than once. So now that's pretty good. But if I hold the left button key down, look at that. It's like I could climb up the wall. So I don't know if you want that to happen. And that's why I suggested disabling the control for going left or right while you wall jump, because if you don't, then this might happen. You climb up walls and maybe you don't want the player to be able to do that. Or you can make it so that you could only wall jump once in the same direction. So maybe you could go back and forth, but maybe you can't continue going up like this. So to do that, we could just add another instance value, max wall jumps, and set that to 1 basically. And then we'd have to well, if you wanted to change the maximum number of wall jumps later on, this is how you'd need like a maximum value that you could change. But in this case, I'm just going to keep it to 1 jump only all the time. So in that case, we could just count the wall jumps. So maybe just count wall jumps and set this to 0. And then in the events, just check if that is less than 1. So when we jump here and we're to the left, we could set a value of count wall jumps to 1, or just add to 1. Actually, since we'll just do that for now. Set it to 1, left or right. We're not really counting it, we're just setting a value, so that variable name isn't really representative of what we're doing. So set that to 1, and then we could do another condition here, or actually we could create a sub event, blank sub event, and then double click and then add a condition, compare instance value, count wall jumps equals 0, drag that up here, and then drag these others inside it. So that way if count wall jumps is 0, then we could wall jump. And then if the player's on the floor, copy this and just set the wall jumps back to 0. So that's good. So that will, let's run it and show you. That will make it so that you can only wall jump once. So let's try that. See? So now, but that won't, that'll make it so that you can't jump from side to side. I just realized that. So that might be a problem. So let's see, how do we fix that? I guess we'd have to have a variable for both sides. So let's rename this. Call it wall jump left and wall jump right. And then in this case we'll just use this condition for the left side. We don't really need that in a sub event. And then copy this over, put this there, change it instead of left, change it to right. And then change this to right. And then up here, do another one for the right side. Set the right side back to 0. So now, I guess when you're jumping from the left side, you want to set the right side back to 0 so that we'll be able to jump back and forth, back and forth. And if you're jumping from the right side, you want to set wall jump left to back to 0. Okay, so let's try it now. Okay, so jump left, right, and can we continue jumping left? Nope. But we could jump from left to right, and like that. So it's one way to control it. Now I guess that does a pretty good job of wall jumping, showing you how to wall jump. We could do that other more technical stuff where you kind of disable the left arrow key while you're jumping, wall jumping, so that you don't get this effect where you kind of continue going towards the wall. I guess I could show you how to do that. One quick way to do it. There's various different ways that you can handle that. Okay, so how would we handle that? I'm trying to think what a simple way to handle that would be. Left, right, basically disable. We could have like a timer. We could have like a timer that goes off for like a fraction of a second. That would disable the controls during that duration. That's one way we can do it. We could also disable it until the player is falling downwards. So when you wall jump, the player will jump up and start traveling upwards. And then when the player peaks, we could re-enable the controls for moving left and right. That might be a little easier because, I don't know. We could try that, I suppose. That way we don't have to use a timer. So we need a way to check whether left and right controls are disabled. So again, we could use another family instance variable and do something like is wall jumping, and make that a boolean, and then when you do wall jump, set the boolean is wall jumping to true, and do that for both sides. And then where are controls for moving left and right? Is moving. Okay, we currently don't have any controls for moving left and right because it just used the default controls. So in that case, now is the time where we probably should disable the default controls. So let's set default controls to no in the properties of the player's family. That way the player will only move and do stuff when we tell it to do that in the events. So we're fine for jumping because we have our own control that does that, our own button press. But now we need to do that also for the left and right. And to do that, let's create another event. Keyboard. Key is down. Let's make it the same as the default ones. Left arrow is down. We could just do a player action. Simulate, where is it? Simulate control left. Okay. And then we could copy this, paste it, and do it for the right arrow. Simulate it moving right. Okay. So that's good. So now basically everything works as it worked before. But now we need to add a blank sub event and just move it up here. Move these other events so that they're nested within that blank sub event. Then we double click on what? Okay, we could right click, add another condition, and then check the player's boolean value is wall jumping. Invert it. So if the player is not wall jumping, we are allowed to move left and right if the player is not wall jumping. So when we wall jump, that gets set to true and disables those simulations of left and right actions. But we need to make it so that it returns control to the player after the wall jump is finished. So we have to decide when it gets finished. In this case, we're going to let it finish when the player is traveling downwards. This might not be the best way to do it because there might be certain situations where the player won't end up traveling back down, and so the controls would never get re-enabled. So we have to think about that, keep that in mind in the future in case that happens, so that we can create ways to fix that or get around it or whatever. So let's see here. Over here we have platform is falling. So that basically corresponds to whether or not the player is traveling down. So we could just copy these, place them in oh, they're both the same. We can just copy one of them and then set it to false. So while jumping is false because the player is traveling down. So now let's run it, see what it looks like, see if everything works as we expect it to. So now we're jumping to the left. We can still move around. While jumping. Let's see, we still have control after wall jumping. Now let's try continuing to move left while jumping. So let's see what happens. As you can see, the player moves much further away while we hold down the left key. So you could see how when the player peaks at the top of the jump, we start moving to the left again because the controls have been re-enabled. So that's kind of an easy way to make it so that it's more interesting, or I don't know whether you would want that or not. Maybe you don't like it that way, so maybe you don't need to do that. Another thing is maybe you want it so the player kind of sticks to the wall even if you press like the other direction. But anyways, there's a lot of ways you could like tweak it to make it a little bit better. Since it's just a general look at certain things you can do, I think that'll work for now. I think we should work on hanging off the ledges. That might be a little interesting, a little more interesting, a little more involved. So let's start that. First of all, we need to be able to make it so that we can figure out whether or not the player is near a ledge. So like when he jumps up here, where should the player be when it activates the player becoming like attached to the ledge? So I think the player should be somewhere in this area. When the player is somewhere here, then he should grab onto the ledge. So you don't want him to grab on if he's too low though, because it might look as if he's, I don't know, because you might want to limit like that sort of thing, so you can design your level a little bit more better. I don't know, you get what I mean. I'm just trying to think how to implement it a simple way, so you get the whole thought process involved here. So jumping up, traveling down. I guess you don't want to get attached if you're traveling up, because you might jump up here over here, and you already have enough momentum to get up over the ledge. So you don't want it to instantly attach to the ledge. That would be kind of not good. So you only want it to attach if you're traveling downwards. Like, oh no, I'm not gonna make the ledge, I'm traveling downwards. So if you're, I think if the y coordinate of the box is below the ground or the surface of the ledge, if it's below it, then you could grab onto it. I think that would be a good spot, and only within a certain distance. If you're too far down, when you hit the side of it, maybe you don't get attached. Okay, so let's create an event. that compares the tile map. Why? I think it'll become obvious as I work on it, and I'll kind of walk you through it. So the tile map has compare tile at and compare tile state at. Compare tile at basically checks what type of tile is at a certain position in the level. So let's click on that. And you can see here tile X and tile Y and a comparison, and tile here, this bottom parameter corresponds to the type of tile, and it's an index base starting from 0 and goes left and right across the tile map, and then goes to the next row and the next row. So the top left tile in the tile map is 0, I think. Yeah. And if there's no tile, it would be -1. So we need to get the tile position. Now the tile map has a expression here called position to tile X. So we'll want to use that, and for the value in here we want to use the player.x value, but we want to add 16 pixels to it, a tile width, and I'll show you why that's the case. And for this other one, see, the tile map has position to tile and tile to position, so make sure you use the right one. And then player.y, we'll just keep it the y for now. Okay, so now if it equals -1, then there's no tile. So what this essentially does, it checks when the player character is here, for instance, it checks the player's coordinate plus 16 pixels to the right, which would be about 1 tile space from the center of the player. So what we're essentially doing is we're checking the tile to the right of the player. We're checking which tile is there. So if the player's here, there would be a tile -1, meaning there's no tile there. If the player's up here and we check it, there would be a tile of 0, the 0 index tile. Let me show you here. Over here we have the tiles. They start from 0 in the top left and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 all the way to the side and gets to the next row, and then 7, 8, 9, 10 or whatever based on the size of the tile map and the size of the tiles. You probably already know that, but I just thought I'd explain it to you. So the ones we used to draw out the tile, we used the tile 0, but there might be other tiles as well, like 1, 2, 3. So we don't want to just check for each of those. So what we do is we check in the events whether or not there is not a tile there, and then we just invert it. We invert this event. So what that means is if there's any tile to the right of the player, then this event will run, okay? But we only want it to run when the player is traveling down and they're next to a wall. They're like flush against it. So in that case, I guess we could, yeah, we'll add another condition for now and just check to see if is by wall to the right, and order it like that, I suppose. So if the player's next to the wall on the right and the tile, there's a tile there, obviously. The reason why we don't just check whether there's a wall to the right is because the player might be like that in that case, where he's just touching it a little bit, and that counts as the player being next to a wall on the right, but the player would be too low, so we wouldn't want it to grab on in this case right here. I can zoom in a little bit. So that's why we add another condition that checks the tile, what kind of tile is there. So if he was located here, it would also have that other condition that says, yeah, there's a tile there, checking the tile map tile at that location. And if he's located here, then yeah, there's a tile. So that might be a little too high. We might want to move it down so that maybe like more like that or something like that. I don't know. But that's a little more technical, so let's just make it easy for now and keep it like that. Maybe I'll show you how to tweak all these things in a future video. Okay, so we have that. Now, I suppose we'll need another instance value variable. Is hanging, I guess. I don't know. Is hanging. Set it to Boolean. So in this case, we just maybe set the Boolean to true when this occurs. And in that case, we could also add a condition that checks if is hanging is false. So this will only run once, basically, if is hanging, if he hasn't grabbed on yet. Okay, so now we want to disable all the player controls or movement while he is hanging. So we can just copy this, add, I don't know, I like adding blank sub-events because I could just drag them around and then paste other events into them. It makes it a little easier to create new stuff. And just invert this so that it's back to normal, is hanging. So if the player is hanging, we don't want the player to keep falling down, okay? So, let's see. How should we do this? Can we set the velocity to 0 maybe? All the time? I wonder what would happen. Like in some cases like this, you might not be sure how it would run, so you just try stuff, see how it runs. Let's see what happens. So when I jump against a corner here, let's see what happens. Okay, as you can see, he slowed down, but he's still moving downwards for some reason. As you can see, it's a little weird because continues to be in that state, that hanging state, even though he's wasn't exactly on it. So we have to figure out a way to completely disable that. we could set the position. There's various ways to do this, but I don't know. And they all have their own like advantages and disadvantages. Like you could just disable the whole platform behavior. You know, you could set this to disabled. Now just disable the whole platform behavior. That's one way to do it. I guess that we can do that. Delete the other action. Just disable it like that. Let's try that. So now when we jump, as you can see, oh well, it affects the other events now. As you can see, he's not completely next to the wall. And this is what happens when you start using like the platform behavior or built-in behaviors, is they have certain quirks to them. So like things might not work like perfectly as you'd expect them to work. Like in that case, the players next to the wall kicked in a little earlier, like 1 pixel earlier. So he isn't exactly flush when it says that he has a wall to the right of it. So there's like little quirks to the behaviors that you run across that make it a little more difficult to work with. So in that case, I don't think that's going to work. So let's just undo that. So instead, just set the vector to y. I think what we're going to have to do is reposition it, the player. So we'll set the position, and since the player is basically the width of a tile, the player is 16 pixels wide, we could just and the tiles are positioned evenly, we can just set the player's position to self.x divided by the tile size, which is 16, and then floor it. And what that does is, okay, how do I explain this? It basically gets the position, the tile position the player is currently. So instead of XY coordinates, it would be like XY tile coordinates. So if he's at position 24, then 24 divided by 16 is 1.5, I think. And then floor would round down, so it would become 1. So he's at a tile position of 1. So in that case, and it starts 0, 1, 2, 3 from the left of the tile map. But then we'd have to multiply this by the tile width to what I'm basically doing is I'm making the player snap to the tile position, and then I'm adding half a tile, which would be 8. So that puts him in the center of the tile. So now we can do the same thing for the y value. And let's see what happens. That might be a little confusing. Some of you might understand that, but it's not that confusing. It's actually very simple. So let's try jumping to the right, and now you can see the player is really stuck to it. Stuck right in the center of that tile. So basically we found the position the player was at, the nearest tile, and stuck him right in the center of that tile. So now he's like jittering around. Why is he doing that? Because the platform behavior is still trying to move him down. So let's see here. You can, and also the player sprite. Where's the player sprite? Every tick up here, player sprite move. We could just move this back all the way down here. I think it's because it's above this event. After the player gets repositioned, we want the sprite to also get repositioned to the correct position. So because it was above it, the player sprite was already again set based on the behavior, where the behavior was trying to move it. And then we were resetting the block position, so we're getting some weird jitter effect of the sprite. So if we just move this event below it after we reposition the block, then the sprite will automatically get positioned to the correct updated position in the events. So let's just run it and show you that that actually fixed it. So if we jump to side here, as you can see, there's no jittering effect anymore. It's just solid stuck to the side there. Now let me refresh this, because I have a suspicion that there'll be another issue that we have to solve. Now if we jump over to the right here, he'll get stuck even though there's no ledge there. So we need to check to see whether it's actually in a ledge, if there's a space empty above it. If there's no space empty above it, then it's not a ledge. Okay, so up here where we check whether there is a tile, let's copy that and check another position, and we set the Y to minus 16. Yeah, let's try that. So that'll check above the position to see if there's a tile above it, above the tile to the right basically. So we want to know if there is no tile, so we invert it back to normal. So now it's normal, and it'll check to see if the tile is empty. So now let's run it. Let's try jumping over here. As you can see, it doesn't hang on because there's no empty spot above the tiles, so there's no ledge there. And if we jump, oh, maybe, I wonder if we try jumping over this, what would happen? Yep, it gets stuck. So that's another issue that we have to solve. So because I had the foresight to realize that would happen, I was able to test it. Sometimes you might not expect something, and while you're testing, something might happen. So because I've been doing this for a long time, and I know like what to expect. So in that case, we have to add another condition. Player is falling. So let's just move that up there to get it next to the other one, just to be more organized. Platform is falling. Player is falling basically. So it'll only work if the player is falling. Let's test it just to show you that that actually fixed the issue. Okay, so we move to the right and we jump over. Let's jump over like that. That's another issue that we have to solve, is while jumping while next to the wall. That should be simple too. As you can see, we jump when we touch and just keep going up. And it doesn't affect the other one. When we fall down, it gets latched on there. And we're currently stuck. We can't get off. We'll have to implement that. But there was that other issue of wall jumping while on the floor. Like if we're standing there and we jump, that's weird. So let's quickly fix that. So up here, we have to check to see if you're not on the floor. So let's copy this condition and just paste it over here. Actually, just to be a little more organized, let's create a sub event and paste it into the sub event and then drag these in there. So I also copied the wrong one, so let's change this to is on floor. So now platform is on floor. We want to invert that. Platform is not on floor, to the left and to the right, then only wall jump. So that'll fix that. Again, I could run it just to show you. I don't have to, but let's just show it anyways. What? Still does it. Why does it do it? Okay, so that didn't fix it. Why didn't it fix it? Platform is not on floor. W is pressed. Platform is not on floor. What's going on here? Platform is on floor. Platform is not on floor. Wall jump to the left is 0. Wall jump to the right is 0. It should work. We could maybe move this up here, invert it. No, that wouldn't work because maybe this other event is affecting it. So current jump less than that. No, that we don't want that because I want to jump inside the air. Let me disable this event and see what happens. So go over here. I can't jump. I think that event is affecting something. I think this event is affecting so when we press W, current jump, we jump off the floor. But as soon as we jump off the floor, these other events fire. I guess the behavior doesn't think it's on. I think the behavior believes it's still on the floor, and that's why these. No, the player. The player doesn't believe it's on the floor, and so these events trigger. I guess as soon as the vector y becomes negative, the behavior believes the player is not on the floor. So this is another case where while you're using a behavior, you're not sure what the behavior is actually doing because it's doing it's doing certain things for you. So like a lot of the programming and the behavior is actually done behind the scenes. So this is one of those cases where there's a little bit of a quirk to it. So in this case, how do we get around it? How do do we get around that? Current jump player is on 4. We could have our own instance value. Let's just add our own instance value is on 4. Make that a Boolean. And then create a sub event here. I like creating blank sub events. Inside the W is pressed event, and then since it's blank, it'll automatically run. And we just set the player's Boolean is on floor to false. Okay, set it to false after all this other stuff runs, and then set a condition here. Player is Boolean set is on floor. If is on floor not true, if it's false, then do this other stuff. Okay, and when the player lands, when the player is on the floor, we'll want to set that Boolean value back to true. Alright. Okay, so now it's like we're, I don't know, it's just an extra technicality that we have to use. So let's try that, see how it runs. So if we move over here, when we jump, it just jumps up and gets attached. We still have to, well, that would work because he's traveling down. But we might not want it to attach if we're just jumping up and down without pressing the right or left. So that's another thing we have to think about. How about jumping over here? So as you can see, we fixed that wall jumping issue, and you still be able to jump to the walls. What if we just jump up over here while next to the ledge? Probably don't want to latch onto the ledge if we're just jumping straight up like this, do we? I don't know. You might want it so that only when you're holding the right key towards the ledge, then he latches on. That might be something we can add. So you know, that's just, we could add another condition over here. How would we do that? Left arrow is down. We can just, right arrow is down since it's for the right. We can just add that there. Run it, see how it runs. So let's try that, jumping up, and he doesn't get attached. But if we hold right, then he gets attached. Okay, so we fix that. So all these little details that you come across while you are creating something kind of has to get fixed, that sort of thing. So now what we want to do also is, as you saw earlier, when we pressed left and right, it was changing the direction of the character. So up here, we still have the vector stuff getting set. So it's just a matter of reordering some things. Let's move this down here below those, and also set the X vector to 0. So that will make it so that you won't change direction. I'm just going to test it to see if that actually works. Okay, so yeah, that works. But we want to make it so that he also changes his animation to look as if he's grabbing on to the wall. So we'll go into the player. No, not that. Player sprite. Where's the player sprite? Okay, player sprite. And just duplicate that. And maybe grab. Call it grab. And then zoom in and make it look something like that, where he's grabbing on. I don't know, something like that. I don't know where the ledge would be. That's kind of something you would figure out. So yeah, he's grabbing on. And you might want to have another animation that for like pulling himself up over the ledge. But for now, let's just do that. And then when he gets attached, if he is hanging, just set the animation to grab. What is it? Oh, cancel that. Set the player sprite animation to grab. And now, well, that should work, but let's do some more stuff. How about jumping off or letting go? So is hanging, and let's create a sub event. Paste this right arrow and then change it to down arrow. Down is, if down arrow is down, then we then we let go. So we set hanging to false. As I'm doing this, I'm realizing there's other certain things that we'll have to fix as we figure things out. Because as we implement stuff, it might affect other stuff. So it's kind of like a balancing act. Down arrow is down. Set it to false. And then I think that should be enough to just make it fall off. Let's try it. But he might continue hanging if we press to the right again. So we're hanging there, we press down, he falls off. Hanging there, press down, he falls off. Now if we continue pressing right and then press down, as you can see, nothing happens. So that might be something you want to control as well. Like maybe he doesn't grab when the down arrow is pressed. I don't know. So we'd have to add that to that other condition. Or pressing left. Maybe if we press left, he gets off as well. Maybe. Left and jump, maybe. Hold down left and then press jump. Maybe he could jump. Or just pressing jump makes him jump up. So let's try that. Let's where is it? W is pressed. Hang false. We just make it so when W is pressed, is hanging is set to false. Yeah, set to false. All this other stuff. I wonder if it'll work if we move it down there. Let's try that. Just to be a little organized. So if we press jump, he jumps off. Since he's next to a wall, he kind of wall jumps. So I don't know if you'd want it to jump off like that. Maybe you'd just want it to jump up. So that's kind of interesting. I don't know if I like it like that. I kind of just want him to jump without wall jumping. So is hanging false? Is hanging. You can just put this up here so he doesn't wall jump if he is hanging. Invert that. And that should fix that issue. So let's jump up and jump over here. Now if we just press jump, nothing happens. Okay. He just falls. Why does he fall? Oh, wait, what? Why does that happen? Is hanging current jumps. That's weird. He's not hanging. He's jumping. Should have worked. Press W. Platform is on floor, not on floors, and is hanging. It's not. Isn't hanging. That's weird. Is hanging set 0. Why is this running? Is hanging. But we set it to false. Okay, that's really weird. There might be some like quirk with the behavior happening that we're not sure why it's doing that. This is another like downside to using behaviors. If you want to do something more advanced, you have to kind of figure out how to get around certain issues. I wonder, blank sub event. If we set this to just is hanging and we set that to that, I wonder what would happen. I mean, there's nothing different between those two events, so it should do the same thing, but why? So I don't expect it to work. Let's see. Oh, what? It worked? That is weird. Okay, if we hold left and then jump off. So there. So that's pretty good. Now we have hanging on to ledges at the right side of the ledge. You just duplicate that event for the other side. Why does that work and this event not work? Current jump is less than max jumps. It should be. Oh, maybe it isn't. Oh yeah, okay, I got it. Current jump, as soon as you jump, the max jump is 1 already. So we can't jump anymore. That's why that isn't working. So I got you. So I guess we don't really need this event. We just need to set the current jump back to 0 when you wall hang. So over here in the wall hanging, we just set value current jump back to 0 because yeah. So now it should work. The current jump was set to the max jump. I forgot about that. So now, yeah, it just works as we thought it would. Okay, because we had it so that we could raise the maximum number of jumps when we collect that, so we can jump up there. Okay, so now let's just copy that event over so it works with the other side. So let's copy this, paste it, change this to left arrow, and has wall to the left. Set this to -16, and same for this other one, -16 for the X, and there, that's good. Down arrow, left, blah blah. What else is hanging? Oh, okay. Oh yeah, I guess that works. That's fine. So let's try it now. Let's try it for the left side. Can't jump up all the way up there. Can we reach it? Yep. Now we grab down, we jump. Yeah. We've got some ledge hanging action that allows us to get up there. Yeah. That's pretty cool, isn't it? As you can see, oh, we get not quite high enough to get up there, so let's get some more height. Jump over. Yeah. So as you can see, it adds a little more interesting puzzle solving to your levels. Oh no. Gotta time that jump. So as you can see, you got a lot of stuff going on here. It's already becoming pretty interesting. So I think I'll leave that for this video since it's getting kind of long. I think we're over an hour already. But hopefully that helps you, since it shows you the whole process, the thought process, and on things you might come across as far as like quirks with the behavior and how to get around it, that sort of thing. In future videos we might do a little more advanced stuff, maybe tweak some of these things to work a little bit better, maybe create an animation where he's pulling himself up over the ledge, and so you don't have to just jump and that sort of thing. Or maybe like sliding down, maybe like yeah, like sliding down, could have like an animation there and that sort of thing, rolling and other stuff. But yeah, I think that gives you a good idea. I'll put the file in my Patreon page for you to download for free. And if you have any questions or want me to cover anything, just let me know in the comments or wherever, and if it looks like something that would be interesting or helpful, I'll do that. And yeah, so that's that.